Hello, my dear. I'm to be continuing our lessons in these videos. Though for the sake of other possible viewers and the informality of our previous lessons, I'll be covering some of our old material, including general advice. Maths are foundational to lots of other things, so let's get that out of the way. We can start with notation. You know how I love notation. These are the familiar numbers we use, and they are this way for some really cool reasons. They're in base 10. You can tell because there's 10 of them. Base systems have to do with exponents, so I'll elaborate more on that when we get there, but that's why 1, 0 is 10. 10 numbers from 0 to 9. 1, 0 always represents the base, so 10 in base 10, 8 in octal, 12 in dozenal, etc. Counting on your fingers is done in base 5, and so are Roman numerals and tally marks. We'll come back to fingers, but those others are all additive, whereas ours are positional. Additive numbers get unwieldy fast, even with new symbols for each growing magnitude, and sometimes the order matters, and sometimes it doesn't. Not clear. Positional numbers break things into largest groups first and then progressively smaller ones, making huge numbers with less writing and only a handful of symbols. And speaking of handfuls, how high can you count on your hands? I'll need gloves for this. You can count to 10 using 2 5s, but that's not very high. Counting sign language style gets you to 20, but that's still additive, which is no good at all. I use my left hand for units and my right hand for tens, so I can count to 100. And if you count the phalanges, that's a dozen on one hand and a gross and a dozen in total. Dozenal is great because 12 has more useful prime factors. I mean, when's the last time you had to divide something into fifths? Did you do it well? Dozenal is easy to pick up, and common divisions and multiplications are simple. The extra symbols are called dec and L, and fractions are done with a dozenal point. Numberphile has a great video on it. On the topic of alternative number systems, Octomatics for octal is a truly beautiful one, even if the symbols aren't logographically unique. It has a binary internal logic, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's easy to add with, multiply by powers of 2, and it would make interfacing with computers much more natural, unless we switch to ternary computers, which would be just grand. The thinking behind it is admirably genius. I've thought about ways to do a hexadecimal version for reasons that may or may not involve ponies, but neither of my two solutions are quite as elegant. Maybe we'll come back to that. You can also use Octomatics to count on your hands pretty easily. Just use the spaces. And you can use the thumb space to count in hexadecimal, meaning that on both hands you can count up to 255. If you use both styles at once, you can hold 2 two-digit numbers, or 1 really huge number, or 4 smaller numbers, etc. Our regular old number system has a few shortcomings, however. There's no obvious relationship between numerals and what they represent. There's also no way to update them without erasing them, and while that's less of an issue since the computer is so ubiquitous, it's still nice to have less erasing for keeping a paper character sheet clean. My solution is called star notation, and it's kind of a big subject, so we'll do it in another episode. The short version is that it's iterative base 10 with a 2-decade base 5 internal logic. It also makes maths problems look delightfully whimsical. I love complicated words. They're so much fun to say. Doubly so when the long, impressive explanations that underpin them actually have meaning. You run into that a lot in maths and sciences. Also in the sciences, you get to say fun things like the sky is running out of internet, and the moon is falling up, and it isn't total nonsense.